If you've ever felt your heart race during a stressful week, stick around, because what researchers found next might change how you think about anxiety completely. For decades, doctors treated anxiety and heart disease as two separate conversations, one for your mind, one for your body. But in 2010, a team led by Roest decided to actually test that assumption with real, long-term data. So they did something big. They gathered 20 separate longitudinal studies, research that followed the same people over years, sometimes over a decade, tracking their health from the very beginning. Combined, these studies covered nearly 250,000 people. Not people who already had heart problems. Healthy adults, screened for anxiety at the start, then followed for years to see what happened. Here's what they found. People with higher anxiety were roughly 1 in 4 more likely to develop coronary heart disease, 26% higher risk to be exact. And when it came to dying from a cardiac event, the risk jumped to 48% higher, almost half. Now you might be thinking, maybe anxious people just have worse habits. Smoke more, exercise less, eat worse. The researchers thought of that too. They controlled for it, and the link held up anyway. Anxiety on its own tracked with what happened to these people's hearts over the next decade, independent of the usual biological and demographic risk factors. They also checked whether this changed depending on how the studies were built, short follow-up or long, men or women, different types of anxiety. Across every check, the pattern held steady. But there was one exception. When researchers looked specifically at non-fatal heart attacks, the connection weakened. It didn't hold up statistically. So this isn't anxiety causes every kind of heart problem. It's more specific than that. But this is where the story gets bigger. 6 years later, a different team asked a bigger question. Not just coronary heart disease. What about stroke? Heart failure? Cardiovascular death overall? In 2016, Connor Emdin and colleagues at Oxford pulled together 46 cohort studies. Over 2 million participants this time. More than 220,000 of them living with an anxiety disorder. The headline finding, stroke. Anxiety was linked to a 71% higher risk of stroke, the strongest association in the entire dataset. Cardiovascular death and coronary heart disease both came in around 41% higher. Heart failure, 35% higher. 4 different cardiovascular outcomes, all elevated, all independent findings from a massive 2 million person dataset. But here's the honest caveat, and it matters. When the researchers looked at major cardiovascular events as one combined category and at atrial fibrillation specifically, the link wasn't statistically solid. The data just wasn't strong enough there to draw a firm conclusion. So even with 2 huge meta-analyses, 6 years apart, this isn't a story where anxiety equals guaranteed heart disease across the board. It's a pattern that shows up powerfully for some outcomes, and barely at all for others. And then there's the twist. A separate longitudinal study, by Langvik and Nordahl in 2014, found the opposite for acute heart attacks. When they controlled for depression, anxious people in their study actually had a lower risk of an acute heart attack. Lower, not higher. So which is it? Here's the honest answer. We don't fully know yet. Different studies measure anxiety differently. Some track general anxiety disorder. Some track panic disorder. Some separate out depression. Some don't. Even the researchers behind the original meta-analysis said future work needs better, more consistent ways of measuring anxiety before the full picture is clear. But zoom out, and the weight of the evidence is hard to ignore. 2 major meta-analyses, tens of studies, millions of person-years of data. And across almost all of it, anxiety shows up as a measurable, independent predictor of cardiovascular disease and death. Not just a symptom of unhealthy habits. A risk factor in its own right. Your nervous system and your cardiovascular system were never separate. This is the data that proves it. If videos like this, where we go straight to the research and skip the noise, are useful to you, subscribe. There's more of this coming.